Hello, this is lielurr. Thank you for visiting again. If this is your first time coming to this channel, thank you for coming. I plan to do art challenges and art drawings and similar type artistic endeavors on this channel, focusing mostly on traditional art, eventually pivoting toward digital art in the future. I do currently do digital art, but I feel like I've fallen behind in terms of my traditional art, and I want to get back into my roots in terms of drawing with traditional materials like paints and pens and ink and pencil, just anything sort of hands-on that's not just on a screen. So before I get into most of my new art stuff, I wanted to sort of go from the beginning and look at my old works, my old sketchbooks. So my previous video, I did part 1 of my sketchbook tour. You can go ahead and take a look at that. The link is in the description of this video. But I'm going to be continuing my sketchbook tour from the beginning years of 2008 onward up until 2024. So my last sketchbook ended around 2012, which is safely to say about the middle of my college career. So my style sort of solidified at that point, and I was getting more and more into making professional work as an illustrator and working towards my degree in illustration. So I'll do my best to go through these as quickly as possible, kind of just quickly noting what I like, what I don't like, try not to bully myself too much for my older sketches that I don't really love so much, and go through them at my own pace. And if there's any reason that I change the screen suddenly, or if it suddenly cuts to a different image that doesn't look like it's supposed to be there or looks odd or out of place, just know that I've probably skipped ahead because I just feel like maybe it's not appropriate for this channel, or it could just be that I just don't like it. It could just be something that I'm kind of embarrassed about or just isn't up to par with what I want to show, and that's just my personal preference. So starting with this sketchbook, I remember drawing in this in almost every class that I had for sketching, either for my own work or personal work. Whenever I had to sketch, this was the book that I used. I want to say that this book was bought specifically for art class, but I'm not really sure. I think on the back there is a little embossment here of the actual brand. So the brand is Art Alternatives is what it looks like. I have no idea if this book came with the initial kit that we got to go to school. Like, we sort of got an initial sort of starter pack when we went to college of like a big portfolio bag and big sketchbook and canvas board to clip our drawings on and draw on. So I think it may have come with the kit. I don't really remember. Okay, so to start off, let's see if I can remember what this is. This is coming from the year 2012, April 2012. So if I remember correctly, I believe these are characters for a video game idea that I had, and I wanted to create a race of minotaurs. The main goal, I think, when designing these was making them more of a nomadic, sort of tribal sort of characters. No tribe specifically, or no area of the world specifically, but sort of general idea of when you think of a tribal person or a nomadic person or someone who lives off the land. That's what I think of when I was trying to design these characters. Okay, so if anyone knows me, they know that I am one who draws people. I can't draw animals, not that I can't, but I've never been fond of drawing animals. It's never been something that I've, I guess, tried to do without having been assigned it as a project or something. So animals are definitely my weak spot in terms of creating. You can even see here I have a little sketch of my reaction to my drawings themselves. These sketches are not the best, and I guess I gave up pretty early on them because they're very, very loose and very disjointed. So in my first video on this channel, I talked about a comic idea that I had based around fruits and vegetables. So I believe this was a general sketch of the characters that I had in mind for the comic. Initially, my inspirations were definitely things like Superman and Batman. So at this point, these names and factoids are pretty arbitrary. I'm pretty sure I've changed most of this at this point. For example, this is the main character of the story. His name was Dole Mushman at the start, which I like as a name. It's a little corny now that I think back on it. I don't know if I wanted to go so camp with it and make it as corny as that. I may go back and change it, but I like the name Dole as his first name. And then we have Kevin McSquish. So yeah, so names like that, I think I just thought up on the fly and thought it would be cute, but I don't know if I want to go for that sort of vibe. I kind of want it to be a little more realistic and not so on the nose in terms of comic characters and their names. So I even went as far as to design a butler character, so I guess he was supposed to help our main hero, be sort of the Alfred of the group. But thinking back on this, I decided to change the story up quite a bit, so I don't even know if he'd be around. He might be replaced with a different type of character. Here we have the main villain. He would be the equivalent of the Joker, I suppose, in terms of his wants and his desires to basically just inflict harm. He has his actual reasons for it, which I won't get into because it's a little complicated, but he is definitely the sociopath, villain, main bad guy of the series. This was one of his right-hand men. His name is Spuds. That's his nickname anyway. They'd all have nicknames to keep their identities secret. And here we have more of the supporting cast. So here I was definitely thinking of Clark Kent, Superman sort of thing. So I wanted Dole, the main character banana guy, to be working at a newspaper because I figured just go ahead. I know it's obviously a parody of and very heavily inspired by already existing stories like that. So I had him work at a newspaper. This was his editor-in-chief named Arnold Rind, apparently. This was his female partner. Her name was Lizabelle. I think I've changed her name since then, but she's a strawberry, so I figured he could be the main love interest. Like strawberry and bananas go together. It's just a common combo one thinks of when they think of bananas, or at least when I think of banana, I think of strawberry banana as a flavor, so I think they go well together. Okay, so this top section here, I believe, is still in reference to the video game idea I had. So in the video game, I wanted there to be a central religion that everyone, well, not everyone, but the main religion of the series, and it was called Sorpheism, based around the goddess Sorphe, and she was a demon, humanoid demon type character. I think I was just designing more of her. I believe I have more sketches of her along the way, but this is definitely supposed to be Sorphe. Sorphe's main powers were interpreting dreams and seeing people's past and their future based on their dreams and helping them. So not so much fortune telling, but as generally like an oracle is what she was. And that was her main claim to fame as a goddess. These sketches are for something completely different now. This is for a separate idea that I had for a manga series based around these two characters. So there's Tairei here and the main character Uyuki. I can't remember exactly when I started working on these characters or designing them, but I know I used them as a basis for some projects I wanted to use in relation to my Japan trip, which I mentioned in my previous video, which was a trip that I took to Japan that was sponsored by the school. I had to pay for my ticket, of course, but we went to see a lot of Japanese animation studios and a lot of behind the scenes stuff in terms of Japanese animation in general. So museums, festivals, that sort of thing around that. So I used these characters as a basis to create related media related to Japanese animation and the like. So manga covers, and I had so many ideas I wanted to make that I didn't end up making, but to make it a part of my grade and to make me actually have a way to qualify to go to Japan for the trip, because the trip was actually for animation students, I had to create a series of media related to an IP, and I used these guys as my main subject matter. There's more sketches of Tairei and Uyuki. So Tairei is the goddess of the hot springs, and Uyuki was actually a samurai before he was turned into this monster-looking creature. It's actually based on a baboon skull. I figured that was one of the largest, more sort of uncanny looking skulls because of the large jaw and the elongated cranial area. And here are some sketches of some supporting characters. So the story is that Uyuki was a samurai, and he was around in a time where samurais were becoming sort of ruthless and took advantage of their power against the common folk and common people. So Yuki was one of the members of one of the samurai, I don't want to say gangs, but that's kind of what they've ended up being. So they took advantage of the people around and did whatever they wanted because people were afraid of them because they had the samurai swords and they were trained and that sort of thing. Yuki, one night, just drunk, I guess, I was gonna say drunk with power, but just drunk pretty much, he ends up going to a hot spring and killing one of the monkeys that is in the area. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Japanese monkeys that hang around in hot springs, but it's a very common thing in certain areas where there's just monkeys that hang out in hot springs and they take baths and just chill. And that's kind of their whole thing. I'm sure there's more to them than that. So Tairei finds Uyuki after he slays one of her monkeys because she's the goddess of that whole area. So she finds the monkeys as, you know, benevolent creatures that don't do anything. So slaying an innocent creature upsets Tairei. Uyuki's punishment for slaying the monkey is to be turned into a monster himself, because that's how Tairei sees him. A monster is definitely someone who abuses their power and hurts innocent things and people just because they can. So these look like sketchups of maybe concepts for covers that I was doing. I also wanted to do splash pages, which are pages that usually are in manga to introduce the next chapter. So it'll be like a big image, sort of a pin-up image, and then it'll say like chapter 32 or chapter 10 with the title underneath it. And that's I think where most of these sketches are coming from. So it's a little tricky to see here because of the red and the black ink, but you can see a little bit of Taira here. And this is a supporting character that was on the previous page. I just realized I never finished explaining the story. So now that Yuki has been turned into this monster, he has a curse that follows him. He is tasked to complete a certain amount of good deeds to prove that he actually has some humanity and is able to be redeemed. This set of sketches was based around an idea I had for a children's book based around origami. So the whole premise was that there's a child here, I believe his name was Sho, S-H-O-U, and I believe the initial action is that Sho gets into trouble inside of his house. It's unseen what he did, but there's this allusion to that something has either exploded or broken or smashed or something, and his punishment is to be sent outside. A piece of paper appears in front of him and he begins to interact with it, creating these more magnificent and larger creatures as he goes along. Here's more sketches of Sho. More sketches of origami creatures. I definitely took some liberties in terms of designing creatures, but as Sho continues, he creates these larger and more intricate designs out of this piece of paper. So anyone who went to college with me definitely knows who this character is, but if you don't, it's totally fine. This was meant to be a video game character for an RPG game series. Her name is Fiona. She is a human, and this was probably one of my favorite designs. This is Mel. This is another character within the video game idea, the same video game involving Sorfei and the Minotaurs and those characters. Unlike Fiona, who is a gunslinger, Mel is meant to be a sort of MMA style fighter, where she uses her hands and her feet to fight enemies. And this is more of a classification system, I believe, for the kingdom. In terms of world building, this was meant to distinguish different races from each other based on their earrings. People didn't have to get earrings, but if they did, they had to place them in certain spots to make it easier to distinguish them. So here we have just some chibi versions of some of the characters from the video game. The main cast was meant to be composed of Fiona, which this is a really ugly sketch, just go ahead and ignore that. But Fiona as the main character, she's a gunslinger character. There was Mel, she was the hand-to-hand combat. Norley was an elf from one of the elf clans I've developed. He was the archer character. And finally, the swordsman was going to be the prince of the kingdom where all of these characters live. This was a separate character. I believe he was a map maker or a navigator. I don't remember exactly what his title was. I remember he didn't even have a name apparently, but that's another character. So the concept behind these sketches seems to be abuse. I don't exactly remember where they came from, where the idea came from, what brought on this concept, but there clearly is something going on where there are these characters, they look mostly feminine, and there is a third hand in each of them touching them, it seems inappropriately. They also seem to be either sort of disheveled like this character here, or literally their world is pretty much upside down based on what's been happening, or this character who seems sort of oblivious to what's happening in general. These characters, I can definitely say, are more on the controversial side, I suppose. This was definitely around that edgy sort of era of my drawings and story writing. So the series was supposed to be about the main character whose name was Cillian, and the main antagonist of the story was this kid whose name was Satan, spelled S-E-Y-T-O-N. So Cillian is your average sort of character. He has a crush, he goes to school, he's in high school, and he has his own sort of daily things go on in his life until a mysterious character named Satan shows up and starts disrupting it. And he has to figure out a way to get rid of him as quickly as possible because he's just making his life a living hell. Okay, so here's something a little more promising. I don't think this character belongs to any series that I have. I think it's just a forlorn, sorrowful looking sort of character. It might change the next couple pages, but I like this spread. Definitely. I rarely fill pages up like this, especially with just one character, but I do like this. I definitely like the frenetic energy of these sketches. This is where I began to sketch very loosely and the red pen, and then I would tighten everything up with the black pen. So yeah, I have no idea. This character looks very generic. I don't know if they belong to any specific series or idea that I have. So at this point I had a figure drawing class. Even in my figure drawing class, I used black and red ink on top of each other. It just felt like a more natural way to draw muscles. I believe I was doing a self-portrait here. And then I'm not sure if this is supposed to also be me from a different angle. But that one looks closer to what I look like. Okay, I remember what this was. We had to draw people in our class. So we each had to do like rough sketches of people, our fellow classmates. I kind of remember this guy. This person, I have no idea. But we had to do, I don't know if we had a time limit or anything, maybe like 10 minutes or something per sketch, but I remember these were pretty quick. And I didn't want to lose the energy of the sketches, so I didn't put any black ink over them. Here's a little sketch I did. I don't remember what was happening that day, but apparently I was having a pretty rough day, it looks like. Saying that my head hurts. So I said, you know what this headache needs? Rock music. And I felt much better after that. I'm definitely a firm believer that drawing to music or having some sort of audio stimuli in the background while drawing or painting just makes it better. I had a teacher who didn't really believe that. I'm not going to say their name, but I remember listening to music one time, and I believe he had a rule, essentially, that we can't listen to music while we're drawing, and it just felt like, do you not enjoy music? Do you not like being happy? Like, who hurt you? Like, like why would that be such a rule? But I think it was more that people would play music too loudly and it'd be distracting. But I definitely love drawing to music and creating. It really does inspire me to draw, even if it's something unrelated to what I'm drawing, the theme or the genre of the music. Just having something in the background to be playing, or having a music you can sing along to or hum along to, I think just makes the process, the thinking process, the conceptual process that much more fun. These sketches were for a website called The Story Shack. Flash fiction was their whole thing. So people would submit short stories, and then they had Flash illustrators, so they'd have people would come in and draw quick little drawings to support the stories. So that's what I did. I think it was a Craigslist post or something I responded to, and I worked with them for a little while. I don't think I got paid. I don't remember getting paid. If I got paid, it was very little, but this was one of the first stories that I did, if not the first story, about a werewolf sort of entity character sneaking up on a main character. And these were the compositions that I was working on to get it done. There's more sketches of Sho. I wasn't sure if I wanted to make him more realistic or older or age him up or anything. I wanted him to be relatively young, so not a teenager necessarily, sort of at that sort of tween, I guess, era in terms of age, but nothing too old. These were designs for a project that I finished. I mentioned it quickly in the initial video that I made for my art channel, my Hi, This is Lielurr video. But this was supposed to be designs for the main character's best friend in that comic. I want to say these are before I worked on it digitally. I'll have to check the dates, but I'm pretty sure these were prior to the digital work that I did. And I was still developing the character. Oh, I remember these. Okay. So in my previous video, I mentioned that I had a story about a character who was in the fashion industry. So they work as an intern and they want to fulfill their dreams of becoming an actual designer. So that was this character, Hee-young, and he looks so much better compared to the first set of sketches I did even a year or so ago. And I'm very happy that he looks so much better. I'm going to zoom in even more so I can prove it, because that first set of sketches I showed, I'm kind of want to edit them out at this point. But this is what Hee-young is supposed to look like. This was Isul, the character who hires him as an intern. And he works under, so Hee-young works under this person. And this was Kyobong, who was the head director or designer. So it was his fashion company that hired Hee-young under Isul. So these people both work for Kyobong, and Hee-young works for Isul. This is another character, I believe his name was, I want to say this was Jae-sun. for Jae-soon, and he is one of the friends of Hyung in the series. The Prismacolor is so shiny, I'm trying very hard to find an angle to show it off without just pure glare. And on this note, I like Prismacolor pencils. They're very vibrant. They're very waxy though, if you can see. They just present a lot of glare in natural lighting or any lighting at all. They can very easily be sort of even make the what's underneath it just be washed out entirely. And that's one of the biggest flaws I have with them. So, and you can't draw on top of them because of that. So it's a bit tricky to work with them, I think. If anyone can recommend Prismacolors that are vibrant but not super glossy and shiny like this when they're finished, please let me know. This is from my storyboarding class. We had to do a storyboard for a Aesop fable. This was, I believe, The Old Man and Death. Fable, paraphrasing it, is that there's an old man and he is struggling with this bundle of sticks that he has to carry home, and he's tired and he's like, you know what? Death, take me, please. It's like, I've had enough, I've done enough, I've lived long enough, this is it. And he gets frustrated and calls upon Death, and then Death comes right up behind him and is like, okay, let's go then. And he basically says, oh, you know, when I said death come take me, what I really meant was, that was the old man, and then this was the character Death. So I designed Death. I remember being very proud of his patterning on his cloak, where these little skulls, this sort of embellishment pattern here. That was really fun to do. And I think I believe I have some finalized work on my site, and I can just show those in a sec what the finalized images look like. Here's some more sketches of the old man. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to be my reaction or just how he looks, but I think they're both accurate in this sense. I was trying my best not to draw Grimm from Billy and Mandy in my version of Death. Kind of like squashed and stretched him as I designed him. So I suppose at one point we had to draw an actual model sheet, I guess, for the characters. So here's the old man and the gist of him. So yeah, he's carrying a bundle of sticks and is showing him being more tattered. Okay, so I think in the initial sketch, he looked too regal, and I wanted him to look like he was really struggling. So I tattered him up. I kind of give it a more stylized look overall. One for Death. Same thing with Death. Kind of simplified the features, made it more graphically stand out in terms of the shapes and everything. Still love this pattern. So here are some actual compositions for the pages. So I think it was it wasn't very long of a fable. It was probably like a paragraph at most. So I think almost every sentence had its own panel design for it. So I was just drawing as the ideas came to me. So I kind of remember in the story, I think this is the shot one of the shots where he was praying for death. The shot of him going up the road or the hill. This, I believe, was the final shot of him explaining to Death, you know what, maybe I can walk a little bit further. Another shot of him praying for death. This is meant to be a shot of him throwing down his bundle in anger, saying, you know what, I've had it. There's another one, but I don't think it was as strong as this frame here. I kind of remember drawing these panels. I like the energy in this one a lot. I don't remember if I ended up choosing that as one of the final drawings, but I like the extreme close-up there of Death encroaching in this man's space. I remember this being one of the final shots, and that I think I made him smaller in relation to Death to make Death seem even more horrifying and unreal. I think this was the same frame, the same idea for the frame, but the composition wasn't working for that. Yeah, I think this is what ended up being the final frame for the shot where Death appears to him. That one's really good. This one I like, but I think it's a little too extreme, and you don't get to see the man's reaction. You just sort of you kind of guess what his reaction would be. But this one I think works. It's a happy medium between this shot and this one. And then these are, I think, were just the final shots where he's negotiating with death, or saying, you know what, it's you came this far, you deserve a break, don't worry about it, I'll handle it myself. Here's another set of sketches I did for the story involving Yoak and the adult actors and actresses. So this is a character that I really like. His name is Suven. I think I'm more drawn to characters that have irregular hairstyles and piercings and that sort of thing, so he kind of checks all the boxes in terms of that sort of thing. I'm not sure if this comic has any real meaning or if I was just sketching just to be sketching. But you can kind of barely see it, but I'm still using red pen to sketch. I'm not using pencil. I think I swore off a pencil at this point in my life, but I'm still using black ink pen, regular ballpoint pen, and ballpoint red ink pens. And this is still that style that I was saying that I really like, the cleanness of and the exact nature of everything. So this was supposed to be for a set of face cards for a personalized deck that I was going to design. I think it was all the rage at one point on the internet. People have their own decks, but then I think people realize really quickly that there's a lot more into it than just designing the face cards. If you want to do the whole deck, you got to design, the ornaments and the embellishments, the back, the front, everything like that. So it was really cool to see people actually create some and print them out, but I never got farther than designing the face cards. So because I can't just have regular anything, I decided to make my cards have different families involved in each of the card packs. So the spades, the clubs, and the diamonds and the hearts all had their own affiliated families and their own insignias and that sort of thing based on their elements. So this was the Queen of Diamonds. Literally, they're encrusted with jewelry. Any sort of accessory they have is very much highlighted on their body. So here we have more sketches of, I want to say, Yellow, which was a character that I initially drew years and years ago. I had this idea a long time ago with Yoak and the adult actors and actresses. I feel like there's a name for this series. I can't figure out what it is going to be at this point. But this, I believe, is Yellow's one of the most updated versions of him. So for Yellow, I think I wanted his personality to be he kind of comes off sort of snobbish if you don't know him very well. And he likes to tease pretty much anyone just for the fun of it, but he is more endearing and more lonely than he initially gives off. Okay, and these were sketches for another project which I was happily able to do. If at any point I could include anime or manga stuff into my portfolio for school, I did it. So this was a project where we had to do covers and mock-ups of books. So I chose manga, and I decided to do manga covers featuring the characters from the Hyung story, which is actually called Beautiful Beast, which includes Hyung, and I believe this is Kyubong from the previous set of pages, and I think this was Jae-sun on this one. So these were just some layouts I was doing for the mock-ups. And I really like making mock-ups. Like, in terms of graphic design, this is what I like. I like designing things that look good. Designing things and making them look legit is really fun for me. So I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. I think it's a comic of... I don't know who the characters are supposed to be, honestly. I don't know. It's really sketchy. Even for me, this is really sketchy. Some sort of intimate moment, but I can't tell much more than that. Okay, so here's further proof that I don't understand animals. I don't get them. I don't understand them. These were, I believe, test ideas for my RPG game, monsters and hordes and stuff that you could fight in the game. They're all sort of blah. I kind of like this section here, and then everything else is kind of like bleh. Going back to Yoak and David, I believe this was a sketch page of David, so faces and different important features of David. His hair curled up so much, the more I designed him, he became curlier and curlier. At first, it was really wavy, and it ended up being just really curly and almost kinky towards the end of his final design. And of course, can't have David without Yoak, so here's some Yoak. I guess I was trying to do all the characters, so this is Sven. This was Yallow's, this is sort of Yallow's, I mean, I guess best friend. They're friends. They're definitely better friends than the rest of them on the team. So this is Yallow's friend Sven, who is already an established actor, adult actor. He's the one who has half-shaved head and the fluffy hair on the other side. Okay, so this was pretty fun. I remember this being a fun project. I was going to definitely make a children's book at some point. Not sure if I wanted to include that in my portfolio, but I was gonna write at least 2 short children's book stories based around common life lessons. Like, I think this one with this character, I believe, was about stranger danger, essentially. Like, don't pick up hitchhikers. But he was a hitchhiker character, this amorphous sort of Slender Man-esque character that is picked up in the car, and he presumes to wreak havoc along the trip. And then this story, I believe, was about 2 characters, and the story was about like not leaving hair in the drain and like basically cleaning up after your messes, because you never know what a small mess can create. The kids, they have a clog in their hair drain, so it's here. They have a clog in their drain and decide to go down into the sewer because children's book. They go down into the sewer to find out what the issue is, and it ends up being this giant hairball monster. I think for the ending, it was going to be something as simple as they end up trusting him for some reason. He tells them all these stories or something, and he misguides them, and maybe one of them gets eaten. Which is just kind of the end of both fairy tales. The monster eats the character, or they end up perishing because they were too naive or something. And that was the end of that story. But I really like these panels and these designs for these characters. I was also trying to emulate traditional ink styles digitally. That was part of the challenge with these as well. For this story, with the hitchhiker character, it's something along the same lines in that there is a family driving along at night. I guess these check marks are from panels that I ended up liking more than the others anyway. There's a family driving along the road and they find this creepy character, and the parents for some reason think that it's totally cool to let this guy in, And as the car goes along, they have more and more family members start to just become silent. Like there's a crying baby and there's no longer any crying. So sort of like, I don't know if how to describe it, but like children's books that involve a lot of noise and onomatopoeia. So the story starts off with a baby crying, I think, and maybe a kid sister or kid brother playing a video game. So there's like beeping video game noises, a mother listening to the radio. I think the father is doing something else. So there's a lot of noises. But as the car ride goes on and things become more and more intense, the noises slowly start to dissipate. And then there's left with just silence. And I think just the main character and the creepy character at the end going off to some unknown fate. So that's where my head was in terms of designing children's books. I was definitely inspired by Edward Gorey, who made children's books along the same vein, where they're more creepy than anything, and they do teach lessons in a very sort of black and white sort of way. These are just more sketches of the books, and I think these were cover ideas. These look like just generic sketches of just creepy things happening. These were done with red ballpoint pen, and I want to say like a uniball black ink, like the ink is much richer in this, so it's probably a uniball black ink rollerball pen. But I think these are disembodied hands just sort of attacking people. I don't know. Maybe I was just having fun playing with textures, I guess. Kind of similar to the designs I did in my previous sketchbook of just gory things and just sketching very small and very tiny, just to see how much texture I can get into such a small space. If I remember correctly, this was one of the antagonists for Hee-young's story, the Beautiful Beast story with the fashion design. And this was one of the main antagonists. So she was another designer at the design studio, and she was in love with Isul, and Isul was starting to show affection towards Hee-young, and she became jealous, and it sort of spiraled into this villainous character that tries her best to sabotage Hee-young and win Isul's affection. So this isn't Isul, this is I think his name is Jason, or Jason, and he was Hee-young's friend, and he was always sort of the mouthpiece for Hee-young, because Hee-young was more shy and naive and didn't really speak up for himself, so he would speak on his behalf, and was not afraid to tell Jaehwa how horrible of a person she is for trying to sabotage Hee-young for no real reason. This is one of my friend's OCs. This is like the one human character I think that they have. They have, I think, a handful, but they mostly draw animals. They're really good at it, by the way. So they draw animal characters and animals and fursonas and all that kind of stuff, all the good stuff, but I am not good at animals. So I asked her, I think, one day, just, do you have any human characters I could try sketching? And this is what she came up with. So it's supposed to be a little girl character, and it's a little tricky to see. It's a little faded, actually. I ended up finalizing this and printing it out for her and making it into a little keychain for her. But her thing was she liked to be outside, I believe, so she was into like running around barefoot. It looks like running around barefoot, and I think she had an alligator best friend, if I remember correctly. So this page is a little all over the place, to say the least. So there's some sketching I see of Yuki and Tairei. There's also some stuff from Samurai Jack for some reason, and also some Obake stuff. So I guess I'll talk about what's on the page the most first. Okay, so here we have some more. The series is called Monkeys in Coats, by the way. So I'll just refer to that from now on, Monkeys in Coats. So it was a reference to the common people referring to the samurais as just a bunch of big monkeys or apes in coats, which is the general insult to say someone is like a big hulking sort of brute and they have no respect. So here we have some sketches of Yuki and another supporting character. This character was meant to be a blind girl, so her eyes are wrapped up in these bandages. This was meant to be another kid character. I believe his thing was that he was like a mischief maker, so he had his own little gang, and they were causing trouble at a very young age, and Yuki had to guide them in the right path. I think this is just supposed to be like a sort of postcard or pinup of a Yuki at a hot spring. Another shot of a Yuki, and I think looking at, I want to say this is Tairei, but it might have been the little girl, blind girl character that Yuki's looking at, trying to figure out how to approach. This is supposed to be another pin-up sort of design with Yuki as the monster, Tairei and a monkey in a hot spring relaxing. And then just miscellaneous sketches down here. Okay, so back to the Samurai Jack thing. I'm not sure if there was a hint of the revival just yet at this point, at this year. I'll have to look back. But I was definitely trying to do merch for anime conventions and stuff, but I was trying to do merch of things I actually enjoyed. So I decided to start drawing and sketching some ideas for merchandise. Speaking of merchandise, these are obakes, which are Japanese monsters or sort of ghost story monsters based around Japanese mythology. And I wanted to do a whole sticker set of them. I love the idea of them. There are pretty much established designs for them because there's so many of them, and there's just a ton of already made reference work, but I wanted to, of course, put my own swing on them and twist on them. Here we have more Tairei and Yuki. I really did like this series idea, even after the assignment. Like, I didn't make them for the assignment to go to Japan, but I did fall in love with them after I started designing more and more things for them. So I guess their main character beat, if you want to call it that, was that Tairei was the goddess character. She was the more reserved, soft-spoken, okay, not soft-spoken, she was reserved in her general attitude. So she's not that she's cold, but she only says so much. She also has limited experience with humans in general. She only has so much to say, and she can come off pretty curt. Where Yuki, on the other hand, is more social, at least compared to Tairei. So Yuki contrasts Tairei in that he's more hot-headed and impulsive, where Tairei is more on the cool-headed, reserved side. I think, eventually want them to be romantic and to grow on each other. Tairei, of course, being a little skeptical of the whole thing, as she's never really interacted with humans for a prolonged period of time. I wanted there to be sort of a tragic event and them having to depend on each other. So here's a set of chibi sketches. I think I was still designing merchandise for the table, trying to see if that my work can actually be applied to real life media, like tactile, handheld, printed things. Or maybe it was just con merch designs, I don't remember. But I know these are definitely of people that I actually know. And this is Tairei and Yuki again. Here's a very oogly looking Hyung for some reason. And that was supposed to be me down there. So this character was also from the Tairei Yuki Monkeys and Coats universe. This was one of the initial stories, I think one of the larger stories. I think it's going to be broken up into shorter stories, shorter missions, I suppose, and regular missions that take up longer, maybe multiple chapters. So this was a character, and it was a little girl character, and her story, I believe, was that she was being abused at home, hence the sort of scratch marks and scuff marks, and she was a little disheveled, and Yuki was trying to find a way to save her. I didn't mention this before, but part of Yuki's curse is that he appears as a monster to the people that he has to save. So it's kind of like Tairei kind of tweaked the curse in a way to kind of give him an unfair disadvantage. To everyone else, he looks like a regular human being, but to the people he has to help, he looks like this. So not only does he have to help people who kind of maybe don't even want help or don't even know that they need help, he has to convince them that he's not going to kill them, he's not going to eat them in a time where mythology of like monsters and yokai are very strong. He has to convince people that he's safe, he's okay, he's gonna help them, it's okay. So this little girl character, of course, seeing Yuki as a monster is initially very hard to convince because she's terrified and thinks a demon is chasing her, as one probably would. And these are just more designs of her character. I was still designing what she looked like. I think for this series, one of the hardest hurdles to get over was to make the characters who are in trouble, or the more important characters, not just the background characters, stand out without looking too bizarre or too strange. I wanted them to look like normal people, but making them as original as possible, if that makes any sense. I wanted the characters to be relatable, but not too distinctive. This is one of my favorite pages in my sketchbook for sure. This is kind of a breakdown of Yuki's meeting with the girl and helping her get out of her situation. Yuki meets the girl initially. He sees her swinging on a swing set, and he has to approach her without scaring her off, which is the initial challenge of the whole thing. And this is her reaction to seeing him the first time on the swing. I don't know who makes this doll for her. Maybe Tyre? Maybe she makes it herself. I don't know. I guess she had an original doll and she modified it to look like a Yuki so she can remember him. But I believe he does end up helping her get to a new life or a new family. And this is the shot that we see of her looking back, saying thank you for everything. And this is another shot of Yuki and Tyre. I think this is the opposite shot of Yuki and Tyre looking back at her from the shore. I think she gets taken on a boat or something to a new life. It's her looking back and saying, thank you for everything, and crying. And then Yuki and Tyre looking out from the shore at her, or wishing her the best. So Tyre as a goddess, I'm not sure if I wanted to make it so she's clairvoyant, or maybe she's just based on her knowledge of watching humans for so long, she kind of just knows what's going to happen. But there's a scene where the climax of the story with the little girl character being abused, where Yuki looks on and Tyre says, if you don't act now, she will die. So what will you do? Where Yuki he can't harm people, or he can't harm humans in any way, because that was what hurting people was how he got the curse. So part of his curse is also that he can't physically kill anyone or harm anyone directly. So he has to figure out a way to help her out without slaying anyone, even though he really wants to, and that's his just gut reaction. And here we have some more chibis. I'm not sure what this is for, if I was just sketching just to be sketching. Oh, I think this was, I was having trouble drawing things that were cute. I still don't know if I can draw cute things. It's just, I don't think it's possible for me. And here we have the last page of the sketchbook, which is actually the last page adjacent to the cover. It's the one touching the cover. So like everyone who either wants to admit it or doesn't want to admit it, we all had a phase where we drew our own Alice in Wonderland characters. And these were two of mine, the March Hare and the Mad Hatter. So there's the March Hare. And this was definitely around the time I was inspired by J-Rock and that sort of thing, and that shows the most in the Mad Hatter sketches. So sort of that glam rock, J-Rock, Visual K appeal was definitely in his design. And this is supposed to be my Alice character. The main bit, I believe, in the story was that this was actually a drug trip. It was just as simple as that. I think these characters are based around people she might actually know, but I don't remember if I got any further than just designing the characters. So that was a lot. That was way more than I thought was going to be included in this sketchbook. It's full of so many memories and projects and things that I swear I was going to complete, but just never happened because of life, because that's generally how things happen in my life. So I'm going to end this video right now because I feel like it's going on way too long, and to add another video on top of this would be too much. Your comments and suggestions are really important to me, so please keep those up if you can. So finally, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you're well and you're doing great. Hope that you and yours are doing well and doing great. Have a good night. Have a good day wherever you are. And I hope to see you again very soon with more stuff. Till next time, bye bye.